Hi everybody. This will be the first in a series of videos focusing on HammerNoggin, this little guy here, and we're going to use him as an example of the evolving GroBoto-to-modo workflow. In this particular video, what we're going to talk about is how to set up a GroBoto model for export into Modo to your best advantage, specifically about using grouping as a way to get some variety in the seam styles and other aspects of the model that you import into Modo, and thereby open up a broader range of modeling options once you bring the model into Modo. I'm using the G key here to highlight various groups that have been already defined for this model in GroBoto. And you will see over there on the right in the object panel, as soon as that text gets out of the way, you'll see the names of the group pop up there as I select them. We won't be using all of these groups individually. We won't be separating each of them out individually for export. We'll sort of have groups of groups, but I'm going to go ahead and explode the whole thing here just so you can get an idea of the construction. And one of the things I'm going to highlight here is a common practice that we use when modeling in GroBoto for setting up relationships between different groups of objects that we want to fit together but not actually intersect. And it's one of the wonderful advantages of a true and accurate Boolean system. These shoulders and arms have a kind of ball and socket joint arrangement, where the sphere on the shoulder of the arm group fits very neatly into the socket that you see there in the torso. And you can see that the torso is a rather complex Boolean and has a number of objects. But it was very simple to create that socket by making a clone of the shoulder sphere, enlarging it slightly, and subtracting that from the entire Boolean cluster. And here I'm just kind of illustrating that by using our handy snap feature, by placing the mouse cursor over the ball on the arm, and with snapping turned on, I can just slide it over and touch the red outline of that trim sphere that was creating the socket in the torso and snap it right into place. But originally when this was built, again, it was just a matter of cloning that shoulder sphere, enlarging it slightly, and then adding it to the torso's cluster as a subtractive object, and carving out an absolutely perfect fit. Could have been as tight as I wanted. It has a little bit of a gap there just so it will be more obvious and visible in the model. And here I've isolated that subtractive sphere. I've toned down all the other Boolean wires so you can clearly see as I scale it how it cuts away at all of the other geometry on the torso. And this same method was used in many of the joints that formed this model to give it a nice, truly convincing, articulate feel. So here's the whole, or at least the parts of the HammerNoggin that are ready to go now. And before I go any further, let me just point out, I always do this. I tend to work often with lights and shadows and all that stuff on, simply because I like to. It does slow things down a bit, and you get quite a dramatic improvement simply by turning shadows off, as I just did there. Or you can go to that blue line or so-called quick line mode for even smoother performance. But here, now with just shadows off, you'll see that things generally tend to move very smoothly and cleanly. And I'm showing you some of those articulate joints. And this is, again, we're not an animation program, but having those articulate joints and being able to use this GroBoto system, which can use any object's coordinate system as a reference for moving itself or any other object or group of objects, is a very powerful modeling notion. You could even use it for posing your model. But all of that is just a sidetrack. What we really want to get to is the export of these various components for modeling in Modo, and I'm going to focus in now on the head and neck structure here. That'll be the first group of groups that we export. And I have previously saved some export settings just in a copy of the whole Hammerhead GBR file, which is our workaround until we get true group-related mesh settings fully implemented. but it's not a difficult thing to do. You simply get some settings together that you like, save off a GBR file, and then that file can be used as a reference using the Import Mesh Settings button you saw me use just a moment ago there to bring those settings back in. And this is a handy thing to know in any case, because using settings from other files, and they could come from any file, any GBR file, is often a useful thing, because you may have settings that you find work for various similar sorts of geometric arrangements. So a quick peek at the mesh as it is set up now, and this was all tweaked before, so it's pretty much the way I want. Also take a quick peek at the vertex map, the weights assigned to vertices that modulate or vary the effect of tools applied in Modo or other apps. You want to make sure Do Not Center Mesh is checked. That's what allows these things, these separate OBJs, to fit together perfectly once imported into Modo. And go ahead and hit the Export OBJ button and you're ready to go. So now we're just going to go through the same process for the torso. I'm just hiding and showing things here to isolate the torso components. And we're going to export them. And I went through the same process. Earlier I have saved a version of this file with separate distinct settings, export settings for the torso, and I'm going to load those now simply by selecting Import Mesh Settings, finding that file, the torso and arm set GBR, and loading that up, and it changes the settings here in the Output Settings panel. And we can preview that and see one of the main differences being that we have much wider seams, flatter seams, all to give the impression of a kind of more sturdy, solid piece than the kind of detailed and somewhat more delicate head structure. And again, a lot of the same things. You want to make sure you are set to output in normals for your vertex map. That's the way it works with Modo. And we can go ahead and take a look at that. And you can play around with these parameters, and again, we strongly suggest you look at previous videos which talk in more detail about what these vertex settings are and how they work. There's a PDF document online as well that explains the technical details if you're interested in that sort of thing. But the main thing is to get in there and try some things out and play and try some of the tools and editing options that I will be showing you with this torso up next in the next episode of HammerNoggin. And there's a little sneak preview of where it's headed. And please tune in. Should be up in a day or two. Thanks.